This is the Authentic Change Podcast, and I am Mike Horne. Authenticity reflects what we want from each other and our organizations. Open communication, trust, community, fun, and opportunity. I want to help you to do your best in your personal and professional relationships. This podcast delivers expertise, insights, and approaches on authentic leadership, to live your purpose, to lead from your values, to establish connected relationships, to steward people and culture change, to build and sustain prosperity, and to open doors and possibilities. This podcast will assist you in paving the way forward to personal, team, and organizational prosperity. Welcome to this edition of the Authentic Change Podcast. I am absolutely delighted to have in our virtual studio today, Tony Martignetti. And he has just a fabulous title that I can't get enough of. And I hope it resonates with everyone in the audience as well. His title is the Chief Inspiration Officer, not the Chief Information Officer. That's the Chief Inspiration Officer of Inspired Purpose Coaching. As I've gotten to know Tony in our preparation for this call, I know that many turn to him as an advisor, a coach, an experience creator to work on issues of leadership and leading with purpose. In addition to that work that Tony does with his clients, he brings the message of inspiration as an author, a podcast host, and a speaker with over 25 years of business and management experience. And I think what underlies Tony's spirit is his curiosity to elevate leaders, to equip them with the tools that they need to gravitate through change. So rather than me continuing to describe Tony and his mission, the inspiration he brings, Tony, could you introduce yourself to our listening audience to say a few words about yourself and your purpose?
Of course. Well, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here, Mike. First of all, I'll just share that, you did a great job of introducing me, and I love that you got my name right. It's so often people, have a hard time with pronouncing my last name. I would say that, the only thing I would add is that the big thing that I do with the people I work with is I'm working mostly with accomplished leaders who really want to lead with purpose and want to feel fulfilled. I often talk about having them climb the right mountain, and I help them I guide them to climb the right mountain. And I think that comes from this place of realizing that oftentimes we find ourselves navigating this path that maybe it's not the right path for us, and we need to change course or think differently about where we're going. So that's the work that I do, and it's been an honor and a pleasure and a gift to have that opportunity to do that.
Tony, that's great. And I hope it's not an obscure or too old of a reference, but I think about Julie Andrews and I think about Climb Every Mountain and The Sound of Music. And I hope that's not too dated for anyone in our audience. I mean, I think about Sound of Music as one of those sort of iconic, certainly the iconic Julie Andrews film. But what is it about climbing every mountain? I do that every morning here in Palm Desert. I go up to 3,000 feet. I conquer the hill every day. Tell me about that for you.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't ask me to sing any songs, I'll be fine. I'll hum it.
Don't you just want to break out into song?
And ironically enough, I've spent some time in the Alps, so in the Swiss Alps. So definitely a place that I'm not a stranger to.
Right.
But no, I think there's an element of wanting to see the view from that angle and say, gosh, what does it look like to get up to that place that we've aspired to? What's at the top of the mountain? And that's something that, it's ingrained in us to want to strive and do more. And that's perfectly normal. We should want to strive for something bigger. The big question comes down to this, is that making sure that we're doing it for the right reasons. And we're striving to go on a path that we've defined for ourselves. And we're careful not to just look at what society and other people want for us, and just kind of blindly or, with blinders on, just maniacally trudge up the mountain, if you will.
Many of my clients, whether they come to me via coaching or through team development and team growth experiences, are often at some valley, some floor, and the mountain is a helpful image. It's a helpful metaphor. Do you experience that well? I mean, people come to us often at some point of transition where they're feeling a little stuck or they're feeling a loss of hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a daily occurrence. It's like daily, but it's at least a weekly occurrence where there's moments where there's peaks and valleys, and that's what makes life interesting. And if I were to go back to my past, I'll share a little story. I mean, this is what brought me into coaching in the first place, was that, I experienced a deep, profound burnout and depression that had me really questioning the path that I was on. And I realized that I needed to do something different if I was going to hold on to any hope of making it through alive, if you will. And that started my path to uncovering different ways to get better, that eventually led me to leave corporate eventually, and then start this path of helping others to become more alive and more in tune with what fulfillment looks like for them. But I want to come back to, the daily occurrences and things that happen to me now, because even as a coach, people think like, oh, well, you have it all figured out. I'm like, no, not necessarily, because, we have our moments of ups and downs. And there's one quote that has really driven me throughout all of my journey as becoming a coach and to starting my business. And that is, if you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything. It comes from Peter Bregman, who for me was someone who I've always really saw as he's part of my personal board of directors, even though he doesn't know it. But that quote, I'll say it again, just if you're willing to feel everything, you can have anything. And the reason that I love that quote is because it's about really expanding your range and being okay with sometimes you're going to have bad days, sometimes you're going to have good days. And those experiences, they build who you are. They help to shape your human experience.
Tony, are you a mountaineer as well? I mean, are you a climber?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to paint myself as some Alex Honnold or like some, champion mountaineer, but I do truly enjoy the mountains, and I've climbed a fair amount, and I'm about to be taking another hike, which is to Kilimanjaro, doing to the summit of Kilimanjaro, 19,000 feet. So it'll be a fun one.
Wow, that is high. The highest I've done is Mount McKinley here in the States. So what are is it that avocation? Does that fuel your vocation, or does it give you the energy by which to engage in your practices with clients and others?
Yeah, I think it's a little more. It's not just the mountains that has me driven. It's more of this exploration and this desire to be an adventurer that's been ingrained in me since I was a kid. There's a desire to just see more of the world, and that curiosity that's been ingrained in me, that I want to see what else there is to experience. And it's not just about, oh, well, I have to be hang gliding or jumping out of planes and all these other things. Sometimes it's just feeling more emotions, experiencing more people, seeing how other people are living their lives, so that I can understand more about the world and then bring it back into my own experience and understand how that depth of understanding will help me to help others.
So before we talk about the virtual campfire podcast and your book, Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life, let's talk about you as a finance and strategy executive and what led to that. I think I heard you describe it as burnout and depression.
Yeah, it's a great. Thank you for asking. There's it's tough to talk about it, but I definitely something that is important to talk about. because it is something that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And if it helps, I love to share this story. So my journey really started with, getting into the field of finance. I worked in the industry for a long period of time in a great industry, where I was helping to save lives, in the rare disease, oncology. So it was a very noble and very purpose-driven industry, but the work I was doing was more finance and strategy related. And people would meet me and they'd say like, oh, you're not the typical finance person. You don't seem like the person who loves numbers. You seem like you love and understand people more than anything else. And I'm like, okay, but like, this is what I do. And I would continue to force myself to fit into a world that I thought I had to fit into. And as I continued to do that, and I wanted to be as perfect as possible at being that finance expert, fitting into a box that I put myself in, but also felt like the world wanted me to be put in. That is what started to limit me and close me in. And I continued to drive further and further to be perfect in this world, spending less and less time with my family, less and less time, friends, my pursuits that I really enjoyed. And I started to find myself like living my life purely to do work and to be the CFO, to be the finance expert of these companies, to the detriment of my life. I lost myself. And that's how burnout really shows up. It's a sense of like, who am I besides my work? When I define myself as just my work, then I know that I've lost myself. And that's where I was.
And how's the recovery process look like for that? I mean, and how do we help people who may not be experiencing burnout? I mean, in its clinical stage, but, are feeling dissatisfied or unsatisfied with career?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, there are some clues along the way that I wish I had taken advantage of, or at least noticed. And there's some simple things too that I often tell people to look out for. I mean, if you're looking at the weeks ahead and you're realizing that you have nothing on your calendar that really you're excited about, or nothing that really interests you, and you're starting to lose that excitement to go to get into the office, or even to, turn on your computer, then those are signs that things are starting to come to a darker place. So one of the first things I tell them is start to redesign and think differently about your path forward. Because it may not be that your job is in dire straits. It may be that you just lost your connection to it and you need to rekindle that flame. So that's one way that you can start to look at the symptoms of it. But another thing that I found was interesting, and this is what I think about my own journey. One of the things that I had done when I was coming out of this period of darkness is I started meditating, which I never would have thought meditation. Back in the days, I was a naysayer. I was like, no meditation, no. But I meditated and I started to really spend time just being silent and quiet with myself. And it's so hard to do when you're someone who's addicted to doing, which is what I was. I was addicted to doing work. You feel lost when you start to meditate as someone who's like that.
And tell me about the transition then. I mean, I understand some of the dynamics that were at play in this transition, but what motivated you to become the Inspired Purpose Coach? It's a wonderful URL, inspiredpurposecoach.com. But what was the transition to?
Yeah. And I'll say, for starters, there was a moment. Well, let me describe the moment, and then I'll get into the naming and all of that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So the moment that really switched things on for me was, I came out of this place of being, at my dark bottom, and I started to get better, but I was still in the corporate world. I was still doing work as a finance professional, but I was feeling a lot better. eventually I found myself in this boardroom of a biotech company. And, I was looking around the room with a different set of eyes as I usually had. And I started to see everyone was checked out. They all had their heads into their cell phones. And there were these executives that were sitting there arguing with each other about who's right and who's wrong. And I realized that this is not inspiring. This is not the way that leaders should show up. It was toxic. It was self-serving. It was about their egos. And I said to myself, I think I'm done. I think I'm done doing this. I don't want to.
You say this silently?
Yes. Yes. I said it to myself. And I said that I'm going to leave this room, and I'm going to leave this room to change this room. So I got up and I walked out. And I don't know if maybe a few people noticed that, where is he going? But he didn't come back. And I decided that, I was, from that day on, I'm going to do something different with my life that is going to be more purposeful. And it's going to be about really changing the way leaders show up. And the word that kept on coming into my mind is the fact that, I want to be inspired. I want people around me to feel inspired to go to work every day and do the work that lights them up. And inspiration is all about lighting the fire, illuminating. That's at the core of what that word is, breathing life into. So for me, it started to really click. That's what I want. I want my inspired purpose and other people's inspired purpose to show up every day in the work that they do. So that became my calling. And then I had to earn the title of Chief Inspiration Officer. That wasn't something I just gave it to myself and said, this is it. That's who I'm going to be. I had to first figure out, through coaching people, through talking to people. At first, I was like, I'm an imposter. I'm an imposter in this world that I don't know. As I met with people and worked with them, it was kind of mirrored back to me that, gosh, every time I have this conversation with you, I feel like I'm leaving completely open and inspired. And I'm like, great, that's exactly where I want to be. And so the more and more I felt it, I said, I think I've earned myself this title, and I could continue to earn it every day.
What are some of the elements that lead to inspiration?
Yeah. The interesting thing about inspiration, the elements, I think, are, really looking for the clues, opening yourself up to experiences that might possibly bring you to your purpose. Inspiration, I always say, it's like a communication with your soul's purpose. And I hope I don't lose half the people there who are like, oh my gosh, he's going so into the, this otherworldly stuff. But it's true that I think inspiration are the clues. They're the signals that are being sent out. In order to do that, you have to open yourself up to those experiences that are potentially going to inspire you. Those chance encounters with people who, meet you meet them and you hear them talk about the things they talk about, and they bring into your world something that you never thought about. And
it's interesting. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then you start to see the spark in you.
Yes, that's it's about this opening. And I've heard it also described as that the elements of perspiration and inspiration are related. That it requires work.
Yeah.
I mean, in order to evolve to a higher order where you're present, where you're able to discern, and also bring the gift of heart or hope to a situation. So that's what I've often equated, perspiration and inspiration sort of go together. That, and I'm curious, because I am open to possibility. Are there, people who are sort of struck by inspiration, awestruck, or is this more conventional idea that I have is that perspiration and work, help to engender?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's there's these moments that are awestruck, but because even if they feel that way, there was something that led up to it. There was work that went into it. There's, it's like the old saying of, success is where opportunity meets preparation.
Right.
And I often say that it's not that. It's actually success is where opportunity meets preparation and connection, because you need to have those connections with people and ideas and things like that that really come together, that creates those opportunities that then ultimately leads to success. And I know we're talking about inspiration, but that's why this is a good lead in, because it's really about allowing that preparation, which is work, the connections, which also requires putting yourself out there, work. And those things are what lead you to those moments of inspiration.
Yes, I find at times when I'm working with individuals or groups who are struggling with purpose, I'm fine to stay in the moment with that and to work with that and to, really help to discover what lights the fire, maybe to use some of your words, and we'll talk about the virtual campfire, or illuminate, I think, as you referred. And there are others, though, who seem, for whatever reasons, unable to find goals and purpose and mission. And for me, it is some of the most challenging, frustrating, makes me sad kind of work. When people know they want something else, or they may need something else, but just can't figure out, one door to open in that regard. Do you encounter those situations ever? I mean, when people come to the coaching situation or for your leadership work?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing around that, because I definitely, I mean, that's something that some people are so easy, I shouldn't say easy, but they're easier to open up and get them thinking about the goals and how they connect. But others, you have to kind of lay out a story and connect them through the narrative that's going to help them see the way, where they can understand that, where are you now and where do you want to be? And how does that where you want to be, how do you accomplish that? How do you get there? What is the journey that you have to go on to make that happen? And the goals are hidden in that journey between A and B. But it's really takes a little more working to get them out of that, let's call the right brain, left brain thinking. I always get confused. Being so logical and saying, no, logic tells me that it should be just a mathematical equation that gets me there. No, it's not. You have to get a little more creative, a little more energized around this idea that it's possible that there's something more beyond that.
Holding on and letting go.
Yeah.
It's like Bill Bridges used to say, it's not so much that we're so in love with the past that we can't let go of it. We're so, afraid of a new order or a new beginning. It's everything in between, right, that happens. And our skill and our ability to manage through those transitions. And I suppose in, all of the development work that we do, we're always, hoping that the client or the organization is equipped in some new way to weather its crises, to be at the helm of its mission and purpose.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because that's something that's been so important to me in this work. Because if I think back before I got into, the work I'm doing now, I think about all the trainings and things that I went to, and some of them, they landed like so squarely with me, and I was able to use them, and I became part of who I was. And some of them you're just like, okay, great. Didn't really apply it. And so now whenever I think about working with people, I want to make sure that they see that knowledge precedes action, and you have to take action with the things that you're learning. Otherwise, it's just going to go, it's just time wasted.
And I think leadership is one of those topics that's highly resistant to training in many ways. So tell me about the virtual campfire podcast and the ideas that you're exploring there, and what you're doing with your guests and listeners in that area.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be thrilled to. It's been a great journey, and it's something that I never would have imagined I would be doing, but it happened in I think June of 2020, I think is when I first started that show. And for me, the idea of the virtual campfire was, first of all, the campfire being this place where stories have been told since the beginning of time. And what I've done is I've brought people on the show who have been through a journey where they show up now as, powerful, maybe doing something amazing in the world, leaders, thought leaders, authors, musicians, artists, all sorts. And I help them to rewind the clock and go back to where did their gifts come from? What were the moments in their journey that it revealed their gifts into the world? And I call them those moments flashpoints, to connect with this idea of fire, the flashpoint of the fire. And looking at those moments that have really revealed who we are, you can see that, like, by looking back, we can use that power of our past to move us forward. And it's been truly, for me, an honor, a joy, and a blessing, I would say, to be on the journey with the people who have come in on the show and shared who they are. Some people's flashpoints are as dramatic as being near death multiple times, to some that are just like, hey, look, the world wasn't what I wanted it to be, and I had to change it. And I think that's the beauty of it. Some people come on the show and they say, like, I don't have any flashpoints. And then we sit down and we reveal, like, some really amazing insights that, for the people who are listening, it's really, for them to feel as though they're connected to a path for themselves.
And are there, I'm sure you have many. Are there particularly like 2 or 3 insights that you have that often help to unlock something for an individual who's looking to have more purpose and meaning in their work and life?
Yeah. So first of all, I was thinking about particularly from the show, but I would say, if you want to have more meaning and purpose in your life, one of the things that's important to do is to not put yourself in a box. Is to make sure that you get expansive. So move yourself. If you think that, this is who I am, this is how I define myself, maybe question how you're defining yourself, because your purpose could be on the other side of that.
Really relates back to the whole benefit in my work in authentic leadership and authentic change, really thinking about self-awareness as a key ingredient, and self-awareness is only a part of the equation because it involves interaction as well. It's about how we bring more of who we are to what we do into those situations.
Yeah. And I think one of I love that you brought that up, because it makes me think of the other part of this, which is, purpose is often seen as a solo journey, but oftentimes we have to connect with other people to help it get revealed through other people. So I didn't mention what my actual purpose is. My purpose statement, my individual purpose statement, is to see the masterpiece in everyone and help them to reveal it. And the reason why that became my purpose, and it took me a while to get to that, is that because I was an artist as a child, and I, kind of stuffed that down and didn't reveal it. But now what I do is I look for the things inside people that they've been hiding, and I want to help them to unearth that and see how that can be revealed. Because not only are they holding themselves back, but they're holding all of us back.
Mm-hmm. And it is often the greatest challenge is stepping into potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Not changing this behavior or that behavior, but to acknowledge what you're doing and what you're not doing. That is, fostering current conditions. So, and the relationship between the Virtual Campfire podcast and your book, Climbing the Right Mountain, Navigating the Journey to an Inspired Life. Tell me a little bit about that relationship and the lessons that we take from both.
Yeah, I think the central theme to all this is finding fulfillment and connecting to a fulfillment mindset that often we lose sight of. When I look at the podcasts, it's really, these people who have found a way to be at peace with who they are. Yeah. But it's not because they've achieved a lot and they've said, oh, look at me, I'm great. It's because they found a way to be at peace with who they are.
In my work, it's around integrity. And for me, that is making sure that your words and actions match. And even better yet, if your thoughts, words, and actions align.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it creates a kind of congruency. And that congruency generally results in some sustained happiness. It's not the kind of happiness that comes with a new boyfriend or girlfriend or the birth of a child, but a sustained happiness. And as I think, and what we know from social science research is that people generally like working around happy people. Amy Edmondson might talk about it in terms of the psychologically safe environment, right? But I think we're getting at the same things where you feel that you won't be judged, you won't be, confined to a certain area, but that you're really able to have better physical health, better mental health as a result of working in these kinds of environments, all starting with self and relationship to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's well said. And thank you for that, because you said it better than I could have at this point. But I think it really starts with that the self. You can't do for others the way until you've taken care of yourself in a way that says that I'm okay with who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Being comfortable in your own shoes with who you are. And yet, to your earliest points in our conversation, Tony, this idea of openness and, being open to a possibility, to climb the right mountain, to choose the path, to understand about changing courses and gaps. And it's great. And I assume that if members of our audience wanted to get in touch with your a book, Climbing the Right Mountain, and find it on Amazon and all the usual places for the virtual campfire, any of the major outlets.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can find the podcast everywhere, and the book is on Amazon.
Yeah. And what in addition to preparing for what sounds like a big mountaineering trip, what are what are some of the areas in work, just as we begin to wrap up, where you currently continue to get a lot of energy from and receive?
Yeah. Well, I thank you for asking that. There's two things that are really top of mind right now. Number one is I'm working on my second book, which will be out in 2023. And excited about that. Now that I've said it, I have to do it, right?
You have to do it.
So it's called Campfire
I wrote
Lessons.
one and threw it in the trash can.
Yeah.
It was so bad. No. I was writing it for a different audience. I was writing it for my mentors, and I needed to write it for a living audience.
Nice. I love that. But yeah, so that's the thing that's most present. And then the second thing is, as the world begins to continue to open up, I'm hoping to do some more in-person group work, potentially in places where I can get people out in nature and doing some things that will help them to feel connected together and with nature, because that's something that really, I think, makes a big difference. We're all on screens these days, and I think it's good when you can get out and say, what is it like out there?
Yes. Yeah, it's created different. And Tony, this has been a really wonderful conversation around purpose and inspiration. And if folks in our audience wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, the best place to get started is my website, inspiredpurposecoach.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn or any one of the social media channels, but LinkedIn is the primary spot you can find me.
Okay, that's great. So inspiredpurposecoach.com, or find Tony Martignetti on LinkedIn, and the surname, you'll see it in the show notes, Martignetti. So I think the T's win in that case. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But Tony, just an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on Authentic Change. And thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And until our next episode, stay well.
Thanks for listening. And I hope you'll subscribe today and tell a friend about our show. If you're looking for hands-on help to increase your success through authentic change, or have a question you'd like to hear me answer here, please email me at mike@mike-horne, HORNE.com.